being here. Later today in our council meeting, the council will consider a resolution declaring housing as a human right. With this declaration, we will be stating our values and inviting accountability for this and future councils to uphold the dignity and rights of all San Diegans. It's a guiding principle and goal that we must set for ourselves, for the people in our city. I'm very proud to bring this resolution to the council with my colleagues, Council President Pro Tem Mongtomery Steppe, Councilmember LaCava, and Councilmember Campillo. For more on the resolution, I'd like to introduce Council President Pro Tem Mongtomery Steppe.
Thank you, Council President, for that introduction, and good morning, everyone. My name is Council President Pro Tem Mongtomery Steppe, and I represent the 4th Council District in the City of San Diego. And I'm proud to join my council colleagues this morning, speaking in solidarity. We believe if someone has the right to life, they also have the right to what is required to live that life. We have been discussing San Diego's housing crisis for decades, but it's imperative to remember that this is not an issue that happened overnight. Years of urban neglect and discriminatory practices against people and families of color created policies that dictated access to housing. This legacy of discrimination and segregation plays out today through the notable decrease in the Black population within our region, through Black and brown San Diegans having the lowest home ownership rates, and through the overrepresentation of Black people in our unsheltered population. We must be honest about the crisis that the city is facing, and we also must decide when enough is enough. If we are not addressing this crisis truthfully and with equitable solutions, we are gatekeeping opportunities for residents of the city to grow and to thrive. We cannot shy away from these conversations, but we can use them as motivation to create a sustainable community and city where every single one of us feels safe and feels welcome. This housing crisis is testing our morality, and our proposed solution can't just be about the optics of the narrative. We must see people as human beings. We must be grounded in compassion. So when we say housing is a human right, that means ensuring we have stronger renter protections and addressing the rising costs of housing in our region. We must proactively prevent homelessness, detest discrimination, and promote permanent, stable, affordable housing. In simplest terms, we must treat housing like our other essential needs, like food and like water. This crisis requires investment, intentionality, and commitment to improving the quality of life for all people. And with that, I would like to introduce our next speaker, my friend and colleague, Councilmember LaCava.
Morning. I believe that housing is a human right. Today, Council has the opportunity to declare that every San Diegan should have a secure and dignified place to call home at a price that they can afford. Housing is the basis for stability and security for individuals and families. We have relied for decades on private landowners, private capital, and private home builders to deliver homes for San Diegans. The city has implemented an array of programs and policies to incentivize new housing that is truly affordable, but too often results in homes that are affordable to only a few. Yet, policy and politics is not enough to change the market and what the private sector will bear. We must fundamentally change the housing conversation. Change means putting city-owned land on the table to remove land costs as an obstacle to delivering truly affordable housing. The council did exactly that in last month's resolution. Change means expanding the old conversation of just build to build and protect. For too long, we have focused on the delta between existing homes and the RHNA numbers. And we miss the fact that our existing base of truly affordable units is crumbling beneath us. Since 2000, 66,000 homes became unaffordable. The more telling, income restrictions on 2,300 homes have expired. The loss of truly affordable housing translates to displacement of families, financial ruin, and in too many cases, homelessness. I've talked about housing, now let me shift briefly to how this affects San Diegans in the lower rungs of the economy. Extraordinary good work by the City of San Diego, the San Diego Housing Commission, and our regional partners over the past 12 months resulted in nearly 12,000 individuals moving from homelessness to stable housing. That is good news, but not all the news. The Regional Task Force on the Homeless also reported that over 15,000 fell into homeless for the first time. Let me repeat that. Over 15,000 individuals fell into homelessness for the first time during the past 12 months. 15,000. We must stop that trend. We must protect the stability and security of those with housing while we fight for adequate and truly affordable housing for those without. Federal laws do not guarantee a right to housing. Instead, we offer freedom from housing discrimination through the Fair Housing Act. I believe in housing as a human right. I join the mayor and my colleagues in delivering policy, budgets, and actions that keep San Diegans housed, that address the root causes of homelessness, and that provide pathways to housing San Diegans experiencing homelessness. We can do no less. With that, I introduce my friend and colleague, Councilmember Campillo.
Thank you, Councilmember LaCava. My name is Raul Campillo. I'm the Councilmember for San Diego City Council District 7. Safe and stable and affordable housing was first recognized as a human right in the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and since then, it has been reaffirmed in many international treaties and resolutions and declarations. Because, of course, housing is critical to many other facets of life, including physical and mental health, quality of life, access to education, economic outcomes, and many, many more. Now, given this role of safe, stable, and affordable housing being a necessity in achieving these other human rights, that includes safety and security in the homes that people have, and us as a government to make sure people have access to it. International human rights law recognizes everyone's right to an adequate standard of living, and that includes adequate housing. And despite the central place of this right within the global legal system, well over 1 billion people are not adequately housed. Millions around the world live in life or health-threatening conditions, or in other conditions which do not uphold their human rights and also their dignity. Further, millions more are forcibly evicted or threatened with forced eviction from their homes every year. And that situation, sadly, is no different in San Diego. Here in San Diego, we are facing a housing shortage, which makes it difficult to let many to afford the rent, let alone a down payment and a mortgage. We have families and individuals who are unsheltered, not by choice, but by the mere fact that they don't have enough money to have a roof over their heads and a door they can lock and a place where they can be safe. We have families and individuals who are unsheltered, not by their choice, but also because they are evicted by no-fault evictions, because it isn't their fault. We have to remember that. I believe it's incumbent upon myself and other public officials to do everything within our power to ensure housing as a human right is available to all those who want and need housing. And of course, everyone wants and everyone needs housing. It is a central tool to meeting all our constituents' needs, whether they be health or economic, environmental, social, and cultural. I believe it is self-evident that housing is a human right, and I will not forget that as we put that into the panoply of other human rights that we are charged to protect. With that, I'm proud to be the co-signer of this resolution and to pass the microphone back to the Council President, Sean Elo-Rivera.
Thank you, Councilmember Campillo. You heard it from my colleagues. This is a moral issue. This is an issue of opportunity. We are living in the richest nation in the history of the world and in one of the most beautiful cities in that country. And right behind us, we're using a civic building to house families and young people who otherwise wouldn't have a roof over their heads. It doesn't have to be that way. This is not a natural state of affairs. This is the product of decisions that have been made over the years that have created the conditions that we're living in. And today's action in declaring housing a human right is an opportunity for San Diego to boldly position itself and to ask for accountability from our residents to ensure that everyone has access to this basic, fundamental human right and human need, which is a place to call home. So I could not be more proud to be standing with my 3 colleagues here who have co-sponsored this. I am happy to answer questions about the resolution. I appreciate y'all being here, and I'm very much looking forward to the conversation later today. I think this is an important day for San Diego as we take a step forward in ensuring that our most pressing issue, which is our pressing issues, our housing and homelessness crisis, are met head on. Thank you, everyone.
Any questions now? So can you just explain in just layman's terms to your average San Diegan who hears something like this public declaration, who says, what does that even mean? Like, does it mean we're going to be looking for more federal money? Does it mean we're going to try to take money, here in San Diego that's been allocated for something else and move it toward this? Like, what does this mean for people?
Yeah, what I think of this as, and each of my colleagues are more than welcome to add on as well, is a statement of values that we are then to be held accountable to. When we put something in front of us and we vote on it, at that point, we as individuals, the council as a whole, and the city are inviting the public to hold us accountable to providing the right that we've said we believe that they have. So it should be all of those things. It should be pursuing as much funding as possible. It should be streamlining permitting and processing so we can build more housing. It should be strengthening tenant protections so people who are paying their rent and abiding by the terms of their lease aren't forced out on a whim. All of it, right? We're in the situation that we're in with 15,000 people falling into homelessness over the past year, not for one reason or two reasons, but for a variety of reasons. And with today's vote, this is a step toward us committing to taking all the actions necessary to start to turn the page on.
But I guess then the flip side of it is like, wouldn't people be thinking, because we've been talking about this issue for so long, that you were already doing all of those things?
You would hope so, but we're not. I mean, that's the honest answer, right? We've taken a lot of steps forward. I think San Diego is working hard to create more opportunities to build housing. I think we are having an important conversation later today, which we'll talk about in a moment, about strengthening tenant protections. But we can't acknowledge the reality that 15,000 people fell into homelessness last year for the first time, and that seniors are the fastest growing group of people who are becoming homeless, and also pretend like we're doing everything we possibly can. We're doing a lot, as Councilmember LaCava noted. We housed 12,000 people who were experiencing homelessness last year. Not put them in shelter, house them. It's something that we should be really proud of. At the same time, though, 15,000 people fell into homelessness. And we can't, again, in a city this beautiful, that has this much wealth, recognize that 15,000 people are falling into homelessness in a year and say that we're doing a good job and all that we can do when it comes to housing.
I live behind you. I've got all my paperwork done, and the commission will not let me go into my apartment. Why?
I can't answer that off the top of my head, but I'm happy to have staff work with you to see. It should be.
It was a month ago.
Yeah. I think
The
that's
cruelties that are in this place behind me are staggering.
I believe that. That is why we're here.
Sean, are you going to take questions after the second part of this, or if you don't have time, can we at least?
Yeah, I'll take the questions then.
One last thing, and I'm sorry to keep touching on this, but for other San Diegans who are out there who say, we've got potholes all over the place, we've got all these other big issues that are going on, and we do talk about homelessness a lot. What would you tell those people who think, there are other priorities that the city should be taking into account as well?
There are,
Bulldog
and we are. This isn't. We don't
I've
have
got
the luxury
cruelties.
of being a single issue council. But this
People
is the
who
most
do
pressing
drugs
issue.
inside there,
It's,
they get protected.
Time and time again mentioned by residents as the top issue of housing and homelessness. And so, yes, absolutely, we have a job to do when it comes to filling potholes, making sure streetlights work. But at the most basic level, we got to make sure that folks have a home. And so that doesn't mean that we forget about those other things, but in terms of prioritization, making sure that San Diegans have a home, continue to call this place home, that people who are growing up in San Diego continue to live in San Diego. President Pro Tem alluded to the displacement that has occurred.
10 years.
That's got to be top of mind.
Thank you.
record, but not for phone. Look at the criteria, seems like the people that looking at the government criteria have great expectations for the people that are the company. I want to know how the council actually could look at it. What's the criteria set? You know, I mean, basically, if San Diego should be here for a certain amount of time. If you're San Diego, you should have to contribute to the government. But what about the education part, the work experience? How do you good live in the place where you got to make the questions that they come at us with are certainly right.
Yeah.
I would say. So I want to know, are we looking at that on the council?
I think that's part of this the whole conversation, right? Is making it easier for folks to find a home. One, it should not be so easy to push people into homelessness, and two, if that situation occurs, what are we doing to make it as easy as possible for folks to find a home? And I think that having conversations with folks like yourself, that's how we learn about the barriers that you are facing and trying to find the home that you're seeking. And I'm happy to have that conversation. My colleagues have been. I've seen us be moved when folks come into the chambers and share their stories, and I appreciate you sharing yours because I think that's really important.
When it comes to shelters like this, there is zero compassion. Zero.
And that's not okay. It shouldn't be that the only place that someone can find a roof over their head or a shelter is in a place where they feel like they're not being treated with dignity and compassion. That's not acceptable. We have a responsibility for the shelters that we put up to ensure that people feel okay when they're there. They feel safe. They feel treated with respect.
There's no safety in there.
Yeah.
Even staff likes to cover things up and put their energies into people doing wrong and put the people out.
I'm not going to defend that. Those are not the conditions that you should be.
I would love
a workshop on amending the tenant's right to know ordinance. My office has released some proposed changes, but this afternoon's session is really about opening the process to the public and allowing members of the public and the full council to talk about what they'd like to see in an ordinance. The need for stronger tenant protections could not be more clear. Last week, the Regional Task Force on Homelessness showed that the county found housing for nearly 12,000 people over the past year. That's an incredible effort. Sadly, in the same period of time, over 15,000 people reported being homeless for the first time. It's incredibly disappointing, but now we know, even more than we did before, that we need to prevent people from falling into homelessness. If we're going to get out of our homelessness crisis, we must prevent people from being forced to live on the streets. One way to do that is by strengthening tenant protections for those who are paying their rent and complying with the terms of their lease. With sky-high rents in San Diego, if you get evicted, it may cost you $8,000 to $10,000 to get into a new apartment. And again, that eviction could be for someone who's paying their rent and abiding by all the terms of their lease. No-fault evictions put people at risk of becoming homeless. Today's session is meant to start the conversation about how tenant protections be strengthened. And joining me to talk about tenant protections, first is Asma Abdi with the Partnership for the Advancement of New Americans. Asma?
Hello. Can you all hear me? My name is Asma Abdi, and I work as a policy associate with the Partnership for the Advancement of New Americans, PANA, in City Heights. I would first like to thank our council president for leading this effort to address housing insecurity among San Diego families. PANA is a local research, public policy, and community organizing hub dedicated to advancing the full economic, social, and civic inclusion of refugees in the San Diego region. We want to see a San Diego where all families can thrive. Every day, we work with community members who love living in San Diego and want to remain here, but are facing housing instability, including evictions. Facing an eviction, besides potentially resulting in a family losing a roof over their heads, can result in familial stress, poor health outcomes, and disruption in a child's education. That is why we need stronger tenant protections. We know this is not unique to the refugee community in San Diego. Many neighborhoods throughout the region are facing housing instability. As San Diegans, we must protect our most vulnerable community members to create a reality where everybody has access to quality housing. All of us do not have a safety net to rely on. We're one bad illness, one lost job, one car breakdown away from being short on rent money. And some of us are already struggling with making ends meet. That is why we are here today, to show the San Diego City Council that stronger tenant protections are a necessary step to prevent more of our local families from falling into homelessness and foster a San Diego where all residents can thrive and plan for a future. We are here today to tell our stories, connect with our neighbors, and show the City Council that policy solutions exist. They must be brave enough to pass them. Thank you.
I want to make sure I thank the community, both PANA behind us and the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, another tenants' rights group, for the advocacy that they've done on this issue. It is essential that our community be centered in this conversation. We've heard story after story after story about folks who want nothing more than to know that if they pay their rent and abide by the rules, they'll continue to have a place to call home. And sadly, more and more people who, despite paying their rent, abiding by the terms of their lease, either are forced out of that home or living in a constant state of fear that they can be forced out at any time. Those stories are powerful, they're heartbreaking, and I think they are the motivation that my office has been provided to ensure that we make these changes as quickly as possible. So I want to make sure I thank ACE and PANA for their hard work in advocating for tenants, and I think that the whole city owes a debt of gratitude to these organizations for lifting up their voices, telling their stories courageously, and pushing the city to do better. With that, I'm looking forward to our discussion in council today, and I'm happy to answer questions.
we haven't updated our tenant protection since 2004,
Correct.
and the state has a law that we could modify or at least look to that law. And why doesn't that law apply to San Diego?
Because of how old our law is.
Could you be more specific?
Yeah, because our protections were put in when they were. There was a provision in the state law that allowed, it kind of grandfathered in cities like San Diego that had existing laws on the books. But now there's a big gap between San Diego and the state bare minimum for what tenant protections are. We think that needs to change as quickly as possible.
Is there a reason why it's been so long since we have an update? Just lack of.
I think there's a few things. I think that tenants aren't provided with the same level of respect as folks who are in a position of homeownership. I think that there are money forces that push back on any attempt to strengthen tenant protections. We know that big corporate ownership of apartments and even single-family homes has become more and more prevalent, and they have a lot to say when we get conversations like this. They get mad, they push back, they tell us not to do it, and that's had a chilling effect on strengthening protections.
But if you've got the mom and pops, we understand the big investment groups buying up apartments, but you've also got the mom and pops that may own just one or very small. Can you sort of bridge that situation?
We think so,
and appreciate they're not the big investors.
Yeah, I think we can recognize that not every landlord is the same, but I think there needs to be a baseline level of security that everyone living in San Diego has. Again, if you're paying your rent, if you're abiding by the terms of your lease, you should have a modicum of security that you're not going to be out on the streets or forced to find a new place in 2 or 3 months just because there's a higher price tag that can be placed on that apartment that you're living in, or that single family home that you're living in. And over half of San Diegans are renting at this point. But for those folks who are watching who are not, I would encourage you to think about paying your mortgage every month, doing everything you're supposed to do, and then the bank showing up and saying, you know what, the market's really, really good right now, and we can sell that house for $250,000 more than you're paying for it. So let's get out. You're going to get out of there in 2 or 3 months, find a new place to live. Our renters are doing the same thing. They're paying their rent, right? They're doing everything they're supposed to do. And there should be a certain level of security that they have. These are folks who are following the rules. And if we can't provide basic housing security for people who are paying their rent and following the rules, we have a serious, serious problem here in San Diego. And that's part of why we have so many people living on the streets.
Sean, is this personal to you?
Yeah, it is. It's personal to me because it's my neighbors, it's my constituents, but it's also a situation that I've seen my family in before. I know how disruptive an eviction can be to a family. That happened to my family when I was younger. I've seen it happen to my family even in fairly recent years. And there's things that are tangible, obviously, that it costs, right? It's expensive to move. You're scrambling. And then there's intangibles as well. There's the items that are lost when you have to move at the last minute that you'll never get back. There's the days missed from school that a kid experiences and has to explain why they missed school. All of those have an impact. I remember those vividly, those experiences. So yeah, it's personal, but it's not personal just because it's happened to my family. It's personal because I care about the people in my community, and I know that they're living in a constant state of fear that they're next.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody.